Nearly 2.2 million people in Gaza are suffering from food crisis, the highest number of acute food insecurity ever recorded. In Venezuela, political organizations and social sectors signed the proposal for a national agreement on general principles, a schedule and guarantees for the 2024 presidential election. And France's Senate on Wednesday adopted a bill to enshrine a woman's right to an abortion in the constitution. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Nearly 2.2 million people in Gaza are suffering from food crisis, the highest number of acute food insecurity ever recorded. According to the local authorities, the situation is getting worse and worse due to the severe restrictions on fuel shipments, delivery of basic foodstuffs, and electricity supplies. On the other hand, there is a persistent shortage of drinking water in the enclave, where about 97% of the vital liquid below the Earth's surface is unfit for human consumption. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization warned that around half of the Gazan population is in phase 3 or higher of the hunger classification, a situation that represents a record for the organization. In this context, 6 infants reportedly died from severe malnutrition on Wednesday at the Kamal Adwan Hospital and the Al-Shifa Medical Complex in northern Gaza as a result of the ongoing Israeli military blockade imposed on the region. Medical sources confirmed the tragic death, adding that 7 others remain in critical condition, facing severe risk due to the prevailing drought and malnutrition. Last week, the Global Nutrition Cluster documented a step rise in malnutrition among children and pregnant and breastfeeding women in the region, which poses grave threats to their health. As the ongoing Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip enters its 21st week, food and safe water have become incredibly scarce, and diseases are rife, compromising women and children's nutrition and immunity, and resulting in a surge of acute malnutrition. Palestinian authorities reported the death of 2 Israeli soldiers from a toxic fungus while they were in the Gaza Strip as part of the Tel Aviv regime's aggression. The death toll has risen to 3 due to this infection since 2023. The soldiers suffered serious injuries to their limbs on the battlefield and were transferred to hospitals where they developed a resistance to all the treatments tried by doctors. The victims died after the fungus reached their organs. According to medical sources, the fungus may have originated in soil contaminated with sewage. Several Palestinian civilians were reported killed or injured over the last few hours in a series of Israeli aerial and artillery strikes in the central and southern Gaza. According to local authorities, at least 6 civilians were massacred and several others injured in Khan Yunis province as Israeli airstrikes targeted the town of Al-Qarara. On the other hand, casualties were reported as a result of the Israeli bombardment of a residential square in Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza. Simultaneously, Israeli fighter jets launched at least 2 missiles towards the same area, resulting in fatalities and injuries among the local Palestinian residents. The Israeli artillery also fired shells towards a building in the Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis, causing a fire to break out. Israeli human rights organization Peace Now said Wednesday that the Israeli has advanced a plan for the construction of a new colony north of the town of Ubaid Diyah, located east of Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank. According to the organization's report, the so-called Central Command Chief of the Israeli Occupation Army has signed an order specifying the geographic jurisdiction of the new colony north of Ubaid Diyah. The initial phase involves seizing 470 dunams of land for that purpose. The record indicates that this decision is in line with the Israeli government's February 23, 2023 resolution to establish 9 new colonies through legitimizing unauthorized colonial outposts. This includes legalizing the outpost Mitzpe Yehuda, which will be renamed Meshumar Yehuda after the plan implementation. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces partially withdrew from the city of Khan Yunis. The Tel Aviv regime caused destruction in the Gazati city, including massive devastation to the Nasser Medical Center and hundreds of homes. Similarly, schools of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees in the Near East were vandalized. This in the midst of a blockade of basic supplies such as water, medicine, fuel, and food, as part of the plan perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinian people. And in Spain, the leader of the Pemos party, Ion Belarra, called on the government to stop the hypocrisy and impose the arms embargo and break off relations with Israel for the genocide in the Gaza Strip. During the debate of the proposal presented by Podemos, Belarra ratified that the long suffering of the Palestinian people is produced because of the passivity of the Western countries, which has lasted almost 8 years. The Secretary General of Podemos attributed the lack of response to the genocide to a cruel and inhuman reason, but also a simple one, that Israel is an ally of the United States, so the government of Spain does not immediately break diplomatic relations with Israel in order not to anger the United States. Belarra regrets that Israel has turned the Gaza Strip into an open-air extermination camp in the face of the silence of the world. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Venezuela, political organizations and social sectors signed the proposal for a national agreement on general principles, timetable, and application of warranties of the 2024 presidential election. This Wednesday, in declarations to the press, the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, informed that the space for dialogue for the signing of the electoral calendar proposal included 9 rounds of work and more than 150 meetings, in which more than 500 proposals were generated, grouped in 3 fundamental aspects of the electoral calendar. Rodriguez pointed out that the legislative proposals includes all the dates of the political factors of the country. He also stated that the document will be submitted to the National Electoral Council so that they will be the ones to decide on this matter.
Those large new rounds generated more than 150 work meetings, which forced us to process more than 500 proposals on a topic that applies to all of us, the electoral calendar for the 2024 presidential election, and all those proposals were grouped into 3 fundamental aspects of the work of the election calendar.
Deputy Jorge Rodriguez stressed that the Day of National Dialogue was participated by 97% of the political parties registered in the country.
Here are 97% of the political parties properly registered before the National Electoral Council, but I say more. If we attend it numerically, you know that among my hobbies is the analysis of the electoral issue. If we evaluate the result of the last election that was held in Venezuela, which is the election to choose mayors and governors of the year 2021, here is 84% of the popular vote of Venezuela.
In this context, Jorge Rodriguez highlighted the commitment of the Venezuelan government to celebrate electoral events during the last 22 years.
If anything has characterized the development of the political life of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in the last 22 years, it is the constitutional duty to call electoral events to choose mayors and councils, governors and deputies of the regional legislative councils, has never been escaped. President of the Republic and deputies to the National Assembly of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
In Bolivia, the Vice Minister of Transportation, Israel Ticona, died tragically on Tuesday night in a traffic accident when he was on his way to attend to the demands of transporters who were blockading the Cuatro Cañadas region in Santa Cruz. Visibly distressed by the situation, Minister Edgar Montaño was in charge of confirming the event. The incident occurred while the politician was driving a vehicle to the region of Cuatro Cañadas, Santa Cruz, to engage in dialogue with the drivers who had started a road blockade. Two of his companions, Tupac Valda and the driver Franklin Terceros, were injured and are in serious condition in a hospital. The authorities reported that it was a collision with a truck. In addition, they assured that they are conducting an investigation to determine the causes of the accident and to be able to provide further details. Regarding this last news, the President of Bolivia, Luis Arce, wrote on his X platform account, "We receive with deep sadness the news of the death of our brother, Vice Minister of Transportation, Israel Ticona, who lost his life in a tragic traffic accident when he went to Cuatro Cañadas to solve the blockade on the road to La Chiquitania. We send our heartfelt condolences to his family and loved ones at this difficult time." Argentine airline and cargo workers are staging a 24-hour work strike to demand salary improvements amid threats from the Argentine government. So far, over 300 flights have been suspended. The protest was called by unions and associations of aeronautical personnel of Argentine airlines. The strike has led to the cancellation of some 331 flights scheduled for Wednesday, affecting some 24,000 passengers. The demonstrators are demanding better salaries while denouncing the refusal of the Minister of Economy to sit down to dialogue with them. The strike was called after the government presented a proposal for a 12% salary increase for March, which represents a gap of 70% compared to the country's inflation rate. In Mexico, the Regional Prosecutor's Office reported on Tuesday that two pre-candidates for mayor of the municipality of Marabatío, state of Michoacán, were murdered on Monday in separate incidents. The first victim was Miguel Ángel Reyes Zavala, a doctor who aspired to be a candidate of the Morena party of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador for mayor of the municipality and who was shot on Monday afternoon when he was on board his vehicle, according to military and police sources. The Michoacán Prosecutor's Office said in a statement on Monday night that the attack occurred when he was parked in the back of the San Rafael Clinic where he worked, located in the Rancho La Huerta subdivision in the center of Marabatío. Hours later, the body of Armando Pérez Luna, candidate of the opposition National Action Party for the same position, was found inside a car with gunshot wounds. In Honduras, in the department of Santa Rosa de Copan, there was a tragic collision accident in the sector La Montañita that left 17 people dead. The firefighters carried out an intense work of vehicle rescue and patient transfer to the hospital de Occidente. The accident site, 15 people were confirmed dead, among them 7 men and 8 women. In addition, 14 injured were reported to have been transported to the hospital, of which 2 unfortunately died there. Witnesses to the accident described that 2 intercity buses collided head-on at the height of La Montañita, leaving several of the victims trapped between iron sheets. Other drivers and local residents arrived at the scene to rescue the injured and transport them in private vehicles and ambulances to hospitals. Cuba announced new fuel and electricity prices to take effect Friday, March 1st. The announcement was made this Wednesday at a press conference attended by the Ministers of Finance and Prices, Energy and Mines, and the Vice Minister of Economy and Planning and the Vice President of the state financial company, CEMEX. According to the announcement, the new fuel rates will only affect prices at the retail level, while wholesale prices will remain unchanged. As for electricity, a 25% increase is proposed for big consumers, about 500 kilowatt hours, which is far from the country's average consumption. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. France's Senate on Wednesday adopted a bill to enshrine a woman's right to an abortion in the Constitution. The vote cleared a key hurdle for legislation promised by President Emmanuel Macron in response to a rollback in abortion rights in the United States. Wednesday's vote came after the lower house, the National Assembly, overwhelmingly approved the proposal in January. The measure now goes before a joint session of Parliament for its expected approval by a 3/5 majority next week. Macron said after the vote that his government is committed to making women's right to have an abortion irreversible by Constitution.
Ce soir, le Sénat a écrit une nouvelle page du droit des femmes.
Tonight, the Senate has written a new page in women's rights. This vote is historic. We will be the first country in the world to enshrine in the Constitution the freedom for women to have control over their own bodies. This vote reiterates to those who don't know it yet that women in our country are free. This vote reiterates how attached we all are to this freedom.
Wednesday, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, called for a new defense industry strategy to purchase weapons and ammunition with Russian frozen assets. In 2022, the European Union, the US, Japan, and Canada froze some $300 billion in Russian central bank assets in response to the military operation launched by Moscow in Ukraine. Some $200 billion are held in Europe, mainly in the Belgian depository Euroclear. The leaders of several Western countries repeatedly expressed their desire to confiscate the frozen Russian assets and use them for Kyiv's needs. The Kremlin warned last December that if Russian assets are seized illegally, it will affect the global financial system and that there will be legal consequences and a response from Moscow.
It is time to start a conversation about using the windfall profits of frozen Russian assets to jointly purchase military equipment for Ukraine. There could be no stronger symbol and no greater use for that money than to make Ukraine and all of Europe a safer place to live.
The President of China, Xi Jinping, held a meeting with his Sierra Leone counterpart, Julius Maada Bio, to promote and strengthen cooperation between the two countries. The Chinese president said that both countries are willing to consolidate trust, the mutual policy, and strengthen coordination in international and regional affairs. For his part, the head of state of Sierra Leone assured that his country defends the One China principle and firmly supports the protection of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. During this meeting, the two countries signed cooperation agreements in various areas related to the Belt and Road Initiative, agriculture, economic development, and the implementation of the Comprehensive Development Project. Previously, Chinese Premier Li Qiang met with a delegation from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, led by the Chamber's Executive Director, President Susan Clark. The Chinese official highlighted the 45th anniversary of diplomatic relations, where both sides have benefited from mutual cooperation and development. Li Qiang pointed out that the economies of Beijing and Washington are highly complement each other and called for cooperation and mutual benefit rather than confrontation between the two nations. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.